allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call of members present. Michael Croto, Chair.
Kate Stevens, Vice Chair.
Ron Stevens, member.
Kimberly Queenan, Selectman's Rep.
James Buffetti, member.
Curtis Sampson, member.
Okay, good evening. And we have Jay Minkara from NRPC. Welcome. First, before we get started tonight, this is a workshop session. We'll do public input on non-agenda items. Are there any items not on the agenda for this evening that the public wish to comment on? Okay, hearing none, I will close public input on non-agenda items. And we'll go to planning board work session zoning amendments. And we have with us this evening, Mr. Rick Charbonneau and Mr. Jim Metropolis. Good evening, welcome. And Jay, I don't know if you want to get us started or make an introduction or.
Yeah, I think just briefly, obviously, we've had a few workshops so far talking about potential zoning changes. We have talked about some things more broadly, including potential changes to limit the size of distribution centers. That's one of the concerns that has come up. We've also spent a fair amount of time talking really specifically about the northern commercial zone. And so we have had, Mr. Charbonneau has been at some prior meetings with us. Jim Petropolis has as well. And we've had some conversations around, are there additional uses that we should be thinking about? Should we be looking at the range of uses, particularly in the northern commercial zone? And we've had conversations around what the development potential really is. And so I think a couple of things have kind of led into this evening's conversation. One, we've talked about, and I think we've had some suggestions as to potential language that we could be looking at. And also, what would some different development scenarios look like in the northern commercial zone? So we do have some input this evening. One, just some suggested language changes. Which I think we can discuss, and then also a kind of master plan concept for the area that has been proposed that I'm still trying to download, but hopefully will come up pretty shortly. So I don't know if there's any particular order we want to take them in, but maybe we could start with the suggested language while that's happening, and then hopefully we can get that master plan to download. Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. So I'm going to start by putting the language up there. See this? So if this is something
Yeah,
can speak
thank you,
to.
Jay. Good evening, everybody. For the record, my name is Jim Petropoulos. I'm a civil engineer with Hayner Swanson, doing business at 3 Congress Street in Nashua. And Rick Charbonneau, Continental Paving, Litchfield, New Hampshire is with me as well. Thank you for allowing us to appear before you this evening. Many of you may recall we were here on August 17th to say hello. At that meeting, we expressed some concerns about the Northern Commercial District. In going through and reviewing it on Rick's behalf of his properties in the north part of town, it became quite clear to us that the code needed an update. I think it was authored in 1989. There were a number of uses allowed in the zone that weren't practical. And at the time, we offered just some very high altitude suggestions for expanding the uses. As Jay said, what we want to try to do tonight is really three things. Review some of the red line changes that we offered. It's the document that appears up on the screen, and I'll quickly go through what those changes are. Secondly, kind of interesting, Rick just handed out a piece of paper for you. After the last meeting, Rick asked to prepare a high altitude kind of master plan of his properties. And it's not as if there are any pressing needs or uses here, but it was just ideas that went down on the paper to give the board a flavor of what the northern commercial areas of his holdings could accommodate. Obviously, we don't represent other property owners in the NC zone, so we didn't really look at those other undeveloped tracts, and there are several of them and several larger ones. We know that. And so we want to quickly review that plan with you just so you have an understanding what it is. And then the third thing we want to talk about is, kind of where do we go from here? There's a number of things, as you know, that need to happen logistically for us to amend some language in the zoning code. So we just want to discuss that. Again, first item, zone text amendments. It's on the screen. I should have probably brought some handouts for everybody, but under section 800, which is the Northern Commercial District, Attorney Hollis, who was unable to be with us tonight, took a stab at not overhauling the NC zone ordinance, because it's not what we do, and we didn't think it needed that, but just to strengthen it. In the section of currently permitted uses, we thought items B, C, F, J, and N in your code could be strengthened. Under item B for bakeries, drugstores. Under item C's, bars or drinking establishments. Under item F, service-related businesses, including real estate offices, salons, fitness centers, dance studios, martial arts. We talked about at the last meeting, services for the townspeople, so that they don't have to go to a dance lesson maybe in Nashua or in Manchester, provided here. Under category J, community center, including meeting halls. And then item N, strengthen that with a live-work combination where a maximum of 2 residential units may be developed in conjunction with a commercial building such as a plumbing, heating, electrical, ventilation, business, or accessory warehouse.
Hey, Jim, if I could, I just want to make sure I'm reading it correctly. So under B, if I look at the existing B, it says establishments offering goods for sale, including dry goods, foods, hardware, et cetera. Am I reading this to suggest that what's shown up there is just add those
Yes.
words?
Yeah.
So that's okay.
So
So make sure that's clear.
That first section, add the following uses to the currently permitted uses.
Got it.
So we're thinking of strengthening those items in the code.
Okay.
Would you like me to get my code and go through those items and show where we're expanding them, or?
I've got mine sitting in front of me. I don't know if that's
Yeah, I
helpful.
actually pulled up our zoning ordinance at number 800. So if you want to,
You'd like me to do that?
yeah, go ahead. Sure.
Okay.
What are you doing? Is he sending us what he's proposing?
And Jim, I've got
Oh,
the
he's gonna
code in front of me. If
present-
it's
yeah, I
easier
think
for me
he's
to do
gonna
it, I'm
do
happy to.
Either way.
Okay.
I just read off the proposed changes, and I think the question was, where do they fit in the code?
Right.
So under B, that Jay just read, establishment offering sale of dry goods, foods, hardware, clothing, apparel, antiques, and other general retail commodities, but not including automotive service or gas sales. We'd like to add bakeries or drugstores under that item B. Under item C, which says restaurants not including fast food with takeout and or drive-through service, we'd like to add bars or drinking establishments to item C. F currently reads personal services and offices. It's a pretty wide range. I think to tighten it up, we're suggesting service-related businesses, including real estate offices, hair salons, fitness centers, dance studios, and martial arts. Under J, which is public, private, or nonprofit recreation facilities, fraternal orders, or membership clubs, expand it to say community center, including meeting halls. And then under N, which you have your mixed use, which is a blend of commercial and residential, it's a fairly robust paragraph that speaks to sizing and such. We're seeking to strengthen that to live-work combinations, where a maximum of 2 resi units may be developed in conjunction with a commercial use such as plumbing, heating, electrical, or ventilating. So that first piece we're offering, Jay, is just to strengthen what's currently allowed or to provide some clarity. And we've seen that work both ways. It's good for an applicant because he's able to understand it better. And I think it's better for the town because if there's a little bit more definition and detail, I think it helps understand proposed uses.
So we, like in N, for instance, what my thoughts are on that is if there's a plumber that wants to have 2 or 3 employees, he wants to live there and have a garage behind his house for his business, he can do that. That's the intent of that. Or whatever that may be, similar to
It
that,
could be a
electrician.
could be a woodworker,
Could be a wood, somebody, a sign maker, somebody that's
Yeah.
gonna have a few employees that can live there. And because when you think about it, there really isn't anything that exists anywhere around like that. So it would be something on that magnitude to get somebody that wants to be in business, be in the town, not a high impact, but can do that.
Okay, I'm gonna move on because the allowed uses end with the letter P. And what we're suggesting based on our review and our meeting last month is to add the following new permitted uses under Q, car wash. Is there a car wash facility in Litchfield right now? No. R, warehouse distribution centers less than 100,000 square feet in building area. S, landscaping or nursery sales. And you may say, well, wait a minute, we have O, which is agricultural, and you could say that landscaping and nursing sales falls under O. Sure. Again, I think we're just suggesting a little bit more tightness, a little bit more clarity. T would be breweries, distilleries, and winemaking facilities. We're seeing a lot of that activity in other parts of the state, small little microbreweries and things like that, where they create and how do you say it? Make the beer, brew the beer, and then they offer some sales, sometimes pick up, and sometimes there's a few seats or outdoor seating. And then U is one we really like. Professional licenses, services, licensed services, plumbing, heating, electrical, those smaller buildings that aren't fully industrial users and they're not really retail users. And one of the components you'll see in Rick's master plan is some areas that are set back and set off from Charles Bancroft Highway that we would think would be a good use in the zone. So those were the new uses we're proposing. I don't know if there's any questions or thoughts, Jay, about those suggestions. If the board has any thoughts, good ideas, bad ideas, any comments on those?
Anybody have any questions?
I just would like a copy of that. Did we
Yeah,
get-
I can send that to everybody.
Okay, it's not just visualize it.
Right.
I mean, I can visualize it, but I want to just,
I think just one
That's
comment I
good.
would have is under N, where currently it limits, not saying this is good or bad, but currently mixed use limits it to 1 residential unit. So I'm just trying to think about how to integrate live work or whether that's its own bullet, but that's a minor point.
And certainly you're going to hear from us at the end of the meeting when we talk about where we go from here. We're definitely going to encourage tweaking and review and improving the language. Rick is in the construction business. I'm an engineer. Attorney Hollis is a fantastic lawyer, but
Right.
we're not pros at this, and we welcome any really thoughts. It's built your town, and
Yeah,
I
and
think your
And
input's
this
important.
plan that I've come up with is just throw a dot at the wall and
Mhm.
Jim
Yeah.
came up with the best that, just to show what we could do. Doesn't have to be that way. It can be something else. It's really what everybody wants. It's not just, I'm kind of open. It's not. I think it's a long-term plan. I don't think it's anything that's going to happen, you know. It's probably a 10 or 15-year plan. You've already owned quite a bit of this for quite a while already. So it's a long-term thing. It's not going to happen right away, but it's just something to get us pointed in a direction.
Okay, well, let me just continue and then we'll get to the map. We then jump to section 803. Now, 803 under the NC zone, speaks to conditional uses. And right now there's 3 conditional use permits allowed in the NC zone: gasoline sales with conditions, auto service and repair with conditions, and fast food restaurant with conditions. And those are fine. We're actually suggesting that they remain. Attorney Hollis did, in the first part of this, Jay, identify elements for the planning board as kind of criteria for either granting or not granting a conditional use permit. There's 5 points. Let me just read it to everybody. The planning board shall have the authority to modify the dimensional density and other regulations of the district under the following guidelines, which are intended to provide the planning board with the criteria to evaluate site plans and site suitability reports required hereunder. Site plans must be submitted to the planning board for all conditional uses, and such plans must be accompanied by a site suitability report, including appropriate studies, drawings, plans, and illustrations, which shall address the following relevant factors: analysis of the ability of the proposed use and existing uses on the property or immediately adjacent to the property to coexist, and the potential impacts that the proposed and existing immediately adjoining uses may have upon one another. Impacts is what that statement is. What is the impact of this proposal for conditional use before the planning board? Are you impacting your neighbors? Are you impacting existing uses? The burden is on the applicant to prove that those impacts have been either mitigated, addressed, understood, or believed not to be an impact. The second criteria: analysis of any impacts on significant natural, architectural, visual, or aesthetic qualities of the surrounding environment. Well, wait a minute, you're going to build a commercial building in the house next door, you're going to cut to the property line, and the house next door is only 10 feet off that property line. We suggest you keep a 20-foot tree buffer along that property line, things like that. It's giving this planning board, we believe, more power for conditional use permit requests. Number 3, analysis of the health and safety of impacts on customers, residents, employees, and other neighboring properties within the district. Health, safety, and welfare. Every applicant should probably need to address that. 4, analysis of economic or property values impacted. Does particular use that's requested, will that adversely impact the abutting property? If you feel strongly, that would be a reason to approve or not to approve a particular application. And then lastly, consistency with the master plan. So Attorney Hollis is suggesting that this added language under 803 be there to give the planning board more evaluation. The site suitability report is clearly a good starting point, a good narrative for each application that comes before you. We're also suggesting that the following uses be permitted by conditional use permit in the NC zone: multifamily housing, including elderly, mixed uses, any of the principal and accessory uses permitted. Conditional uses are permitted on the same lot as mixed uses. If a property is of enough size that the applicant wants to come in with several uses that are allowed in the zone, that mixed use project, that would require a conditional use permit. Gas stations and associated convenience stores. We have gasoline sales. I think there's a little bit difference there, but I'd be interested in Jay's thoughts on that. And then event facilities. I'm not exactly sure what event facilities are. We can seek further detail from Attorney Hollis on that. But, the thinking the thinking was that these are expanded uses in the NC zone. They're not currently there. We'd like to put them in there, but we want to give the planning board greater authority to make decisions. And we heard last month that Rick has a property that we're going to talk about in a minute across from Mel's, that we took a proposal for a multifamily housing project there. We thought the board liked it, but we couldn't prove hardship, and it was denied. And under this set of circumstances, we could take that application to this board and ask this board for multifamily housing, and you can review it, and you say it might be too big, it might be too small, the density might be too large. And under these criteria, you could provide input to us to amend and tailor our plan. So those were the text changes. I think to put them in better perspective, let me just take a quick minute to go through Rick's map, because, as I said, he asked to, just really maybe for Rick too, and the town, just to kind of get a sense of what his holdings, what could happen. The map you're looking at, obviously an aerial photo. In the red line, you see the NC zone. Starting at the top of the sheet, it's set back off the Charles Bancroft Highway. It comes down to Albuquerque. It runs down the center of Albuquerque. It then heads west in a brook, and then along a series of back property lines. It comes back out just south of Mel's, I think, and heads to the river. Yeah.
It ends at Robin Ave, I believe.
Robin?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think it ends right at Robin Ave.
The Charbonneau Continental properties represent 11 properties and about 50 acres of land. So I'll just give you a quick recap. Up at the very top, Parcel A is a 3.5 acre property. You may recall we were in a couple years ago for a parking lot improvement. Rick currently has a commercial building on that property. But it's the northernmost lot, and I think Rick did a nice job churching up the front parking lot. It's an old graveled area, and pretty good improvement to that property. It's being proposed in the master plan that a road be built coming off of Charles Bancroft Highway, hooking down southerly and then connecting into the Albuquerque. And that would be a frontage road for a number of Rick's parcels to take the pressure off curb cuts along the Charles Bancroft. Parcel B would be in that new subdivision. It's a 2-acre lot. It could support approximately a 12,000 square foot building. When we talk about an electrical contractor or some building of that sort, that's the type of use. You'll see the building. It's got employee parking in the front and a small yard in the back. And that theme runs pretty consistent with parcels C, D, and E. We view those as nice opportunities. They're set back from the Bancroft Highway. We see those as nice opportunities for 3 acre, 1.7 acre, 1.5 acre, small little commercial buildings. They wouldn't be retail. They wouldn't be right up on the Charles Bancroft Highway, and they would have frontage and access off this new road. Parcel F was probably the most interesting one. I kind of struggled with it a little bit. It does measure 5 acres. I mean, it is a sizable holding that he has. But what I drew in there was 2 drive-through uses. I don't know what they are. It could be a coffee shop. It could be a bank. But that to me seems like at the intersection of Albuquerque and Charles Bancroft, a decent opportunity. We also represented on the north end of Car Wash. And so that's not something Rick's going to bring in tomorrow for a site plan, but we thought we would take NC zoned uses, allowed uses, and put them on a plan. And in fact, G and H, because of its frontage on the Bancroft and at the intersection of Albuquerque, we thought G and H would be retail parcels. They measure about 2.8 acres a piece. And those could be small buildings that could have the dance studio, that could have a hair salon, a nail salon. It could have some of those service providers to the north end of town and maybe the entire town of Litchfield. But again, at close to proximity, we've got a curb cut off of Charles Bancroft Highway. As we get removed back from Bancroft Highway, there's a large tract of land that's west of Albuquerque. Rick had mentioned at the last meeting back in the flying 80s that I think he had permitted a 55,000 square foot office building there. To date, it hasn't been built, and because of infrastructure, it's probably not a great office site. What we've represented is on parcel I is a 36-unit multifamily project. We think that's a good location. You can see the transition from the Charles Bancroft Highway as you get away from it and deeper into the property. It's a good transitional piece to the residential properties on April Drive and Roberts Road, Lance Avenue. That project is similar in scope to the Callaway project that was built off of Page Road. I think that was 42 units. This is 36. We did have parcel J that's kind of in the middle of this little loop road we were creating from Albuquerque. That little loop road gives access to the back of the retail lots G and H. It could be a small 8 to 10 to 12 unit elderly, single family detached elderly. Again, a transitional use from the commercial along the Bancroft as you're going south on Albuquerque.
But it could also be a retail.
Yeah,
It's nothing's etched in stone. It could still be retail if that's what somebody wants.
yeah. And then the parcel K is what I talked about moments ago with Rick across from Mel's, way down in the lower left of the sheet. 18 units, multifamily, that we had originally proposed. One other parcel I want to talk about, it's map 21 lot 15. It's the current golf driving range. And I'm bringing that to your attention. It is in the industrial zone. It's not in the NC zone, but it's of enough geometry and shape and size that it could support one of the larger buildings. And if there was 100 to 120 to 130,000 square foot distribution facility that was interested in Litchfield, that's the type of parcel that could support that. It's properly zoned. Other than sanitary sewer, it's got the infrastructure and the shape to support a building like that. And again, that transitions from the commercial to Rick's operation that's slightly off the sheet to the east. So again, we put this together, just food for thought. I put down ideas. Nothing is imminent. Maybe I shouldn't say this, but as Rick starts, master planning for future uses, he's looking out 15, 20, 25 years. So again, this isn't something that's going to happen tomorrow, but it also gives him and his family a little bit of blueprint as to what could be done here. So I'd be happy to answer any questions or
That's-
thoughts on the.
So because of the residential, because of the commercial things or the stores that could be there, that's why I'm showing a future road for the quarry so that we take that truck traffic, because to be honest with you, nobody likes truck traffic. It's a necessary evil, and it'll be there for a long time. So that's why I put that road in there. So if something like that, as this gets developed, I think it's important for that development to move the truck traffic to a more industrial, keep it more an industrial area and then tie it into 3A.
Yeah, you'll see that on the extreme right of the image. It says future road. It's nice to have a client with so much land that he's able to do something like that, and take it away. We're also budgeting a pretty healthy buffer if we do a multi or even an elderly or something. We certainly don't want to have a lot of people take residence in these projects and then immediately start writing letters about noise and things like that about the main operation. So we think with good buffering, that can be accomplished.
Very good. Anybody have anything they want to ask?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to wrap up with our third point, and that would be, the process. Time waits for no man or woman, and it's, September 20th, 21st already. As you know the process better than I do, but a zone change like this will require formal planning board vote, formal selectman vote, getting on the town meeting agenda for next spring. We would like the board to initiate that process. If that's not possible, please let us know as early as you can so that we can initiate some type of citizens petition to move that forward, start that process. But we'd be interested in your thoughts on that.
And I really do want, we're proposing this, but again, I really want to hear what the board's input is. So we're flexible. We can move around. We're not, this is just to show what we think is possible. And we're trying to make a transition from commercial to more residential. I know we're adding housing, but with the golf course across the street, it just makes sense to be there. And no different when I did the quarry. I built the golf course between the houses and the quarry so that there was a big buffer, and that's why it was done that way. And I still believe that. I think that I don't think any business should have a big impact directly with their neighbors, and that's what I'm trying to do again.
I'm happy to kick. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Going off of your presentation last time, or last workshop anyway, I kind of did the same thing, just tried to make a list of things that are missing from the ordinances. But as far as how we want to move this forward, is this almost like it's almost like a master plan, like, because we're not going to be able to add all of these. Well, I guess I don't know, for town meeting, because we do plan to, put some warrant articles forward, specifically dealing with warehouses, but also as more comes out of this, it's just whether it's going to be a giant chunk warrant article or individual things added a bit at a time. What are we looking to get out of this workshop? Is it something that, like a list of things that we would add by warrant article over the next few years?
Well, I certainly think, I think that Mr. Charbonneau and Mr. Petropoulos are offering suggestions for how to best use the property. That doesn't necessarily mean that the planning board has to take the position that we have to do that, but you can certainly play off of that if you wanted to take some of the stuff that they're recommending and incorporate it into the zoning amendment. You can certainly do that. But that's really up to the board. What do you guys want to do?
It's certainly possible for the board to come forward with a warrant article that proposes significant amendments, or at least some amendments to the northern commercial zone. That's definitely doable.
Yeah, I'd keep them separate though, because you're going to have to get it by the voters, and they're going to need, this will shock them. You need some kind of a promotion, or getting them, they're not going to get involved. A lot of them can't, but we're used to seeing this kind of change, so it's not a shock to us.
No.
But I think, I don't know if you want to use, I don't want to say social media or whatever you want to do, but to try to, you said you want input. I'm not saying put it on Facebook, because that's, God knows what will happen there, but you really got to start the buy-in with the voters as well, because you might not get the result you want.
I want it to be a planning board thing. I'm not going to push nothing forward. If nothing happens out there, nothing happens out there. It's not. This is something that if when you guys started talking about making, doing the size of an office building or whatever like that, or a warehouse, I just thought maybe it was an opportunity to come in to look at some of this stuff. And if the board has no interest, that really not going to change my life one way or the other. I mean, if the property sits there and stays as single family houses along there, that's what it does. I'm not, someday it's going to change, and I don't have to change it. I don't have to build any of it. I'm just saying if we want to do something, we can. And we're open for suggestions from the board. But if everybody says they don't want to do anything, okay, we won't do anything.
No, well, pick the ones you want. I just don't know if the big bang way to throw it all in one
Well,
way
I
is
don't
to
think
do
it's,
it.
you know, I mean, I don't think it's necessarily that we want to throw it all in. I think
No.
it's sort of, you know, if we want to take some of the suggestions or maybe,
Be strategic on which
be
ones.
strategic
look
or
at
be
first.
practical.
Yeah.
I think but I think it's a nice overview of, certainly it gives us a kind of an idea of what to look at. And
Yeah, I think there was definitely a sense in prior workshops that there are challenges in getting development in the northern commercial zone and that we should look at some expanded uses. Quite frankly, if I'm looking at the proposed language, which shown under 800 B through N is really relatively benign. I mean, most of those are arguably already allowed, but we don't really say so. So it's interpretive. As an example, we do say we allow retail stores selling, various goods. Is that implicitly include drugstores or bakeries? Maybe. Could we be clearer? That's, perhaps. Certainly I think adding that kind of language, I think is pretty benign. Live work is a little bit more substantive. I don't think people would freak out over that. Car wash, some might argue is a good thing or a bad thing. But again, that's pretty typical. Warehouse, I think we'd already talked about addressing through a conditional use process. And probably the rest of these items, I think, are also, I think, a lot of voters would look at that and think, sure, that sounds reasonable. I mean, I can't speak for voters. The ones that really jump out as really probably needing clarification if we want them, landscaping was previously flagged as not being a permitted use. And again, that it seemed like a reasonable use. It was flagged previously as not being allowed. And the same thing's true for plumbing, heating, electrical services. So those would be substantive, but those would definitely expand the use. So again, adding that's pretty simple changes in the permitted use. Really, I think where you start to see it getting much more challenging is obviously the addition of residential. And that's really a question for the board is there an appetite to allow residential uses in the commercial zone? That's the big change, I think, the most substantive change. And then if so, under what conditions, not to editorialize, well, sure. But the criteria in here is really pretty vague. What's shown, it's kind of, if we were going to allow residential, are there clearer conditions under which we would allow it, rather than just kind of a vague, we'll do an economic analysis. We'll make sure it fits in. But again, that's a decision really for, I think, for the board, but of everything here, clearly that's the most substantive and the most potentially controversial. Do we want to go there? I think it's much more minor to say, do we think that we actually already allow a convenience store with a gas station? Or if not, again, should we be clearer? That's potentially a little bit more of an issue, but that's not a huge issue. I'm raising that only because that is on the list of uses proposed as under conditional use. Event facilities,
Yeah.
I'm really not sure what
Matrix.
that means either. So
Yeah. Do you mind if we share the matrix now at this point?
yeah, why don't you? Sure.
Do you guys, did you get the email from me today? I know I don't have your
I did.
emails, but the first email, and
see
I
if I
have
can
hard
download
copies.
that.
I have a few.
I'm disconnecting just in case.
Oh, you can bring it up if you'd like.
I'm gonna try. Given my download issues.
Jay, I'm,
With that?
I'm not sure I understand that you said that the residential use would be the most controversial.
I would think so, yeah.
So can you explain why do you think that?
Because
This is
I
our
think
ordinances, but
that
this is broken up by
introducing
residential, so it's
multifamily
permitted
residential into
No other
this zone would be a
conditional, so you guys can
significant
keep us-
change. It would be the most significant change.
Yeah, okay.
So
Oh,
if you
okay,
already have a commercial district and you're saying we're gonna allow, bakeries and car washes, that's less of a leap than allowing a residential use. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying it,
Family residential.
correct. Yes, I mean, any residential
What I mean?
theoretically is taking away potential commercial space. And it's a more significant change than the other uses mentioned. Again, I'm not saying it's a good thing or it's a bad thing. It's just, that's a much more substantive change that is likely to be viewed as such, by the voters.
But a lot of the
Isn't there
services we want.
residential already in there? I mean, it's.
Yes.
It's not like it's.
I think that was built.
Yes and no. I mean, it's on the other side of the little brook right there.
Does anyone else
little
need a
bit
hard
on
copy, or-
Roberts
And I-
Road.
and I-
Sorry.
on
No,
the oth-
no,
on the
no, I
other
have
side
two
of-
more. These are
South
mine. I
Bancroft?
wrote on 'em.
Isn't that residential?
The residential ends about.
Here?
Way on the
Oh,
tip,
you
see
have some
page one here?
Yeah, yeah.
But on here, this is all just wide open.
Yep.
Aren't those already there? Is that what it was before?
Yeah,
this?
you definitely have pre-existing, before it was zone commercial, of course, there's
Right.
pre-existing residential.
But if I look at, it looks, that's at map 22 lot 9, goes to map 22, map 21 lot 3. A lot of those are residential, right? I mean, the impact on them, on their homes, for that sort of development across the street was going to be pretty substantial, right? I mean, it's.
And the look and
Thinking
feel of
commercial or
3A.
both?
And the look and feel,
Because
right, I
it's
mean,
rural up
right.
until Albuquerque, right?
so, I mean, it's, for me, it's sort of, what's the vision of that, of 3A? And what do when we think about what that should look like,
Mhm.
what is the vision? In my vision, a big box, like a big box drugstore doesn't seem like it belongs there. Or even a car wash or a gas station. It just doesn't seem like that's in the nature of the look of 3A. And I know we have that relatively smaller section with industrial use. We have the tube place and the auto
LKQ.
parts. Yeah, but it's relatively a small section of otherwise, that's primarily residential. I mean, it would be a major impact, those kinds of things. I mean, some of these uses seem perfectly fine to me. They would seem to be consistent with it, and that's a subjective thing. I know that my view would be probably very different from everybody else in this room, but I think that's what we'd have to grapple with: is what's the vision that we have, that we want to present to the town, to say this is what we think 3A should look like, not only now but 10, 20 years from now. And I'm hoping it's not, like I think I said last time, I'm hoping it's not like, Main Street, Salem, New Hampshire, or Methuen,
Right.
that is just, just stores and commercial and fast food restaurants. And, I mean, that's just, that would be such a dramatic change. And for the people that own homes, that have invested in homes, to see that their property values are probably going to be diminished as a residential home. If you're now going to be, if your house is across the street from a strip mall, that's going to be very different than what it is now.
I do. I agree with you there. I do think depending on how you build the property out. I mean, there are a lot of towns in Massachusetts that tell you when you put in something like this, it conforms to what we want as a town. Whether it looks rustic, whether it looks, cottage feel or whatever. So a town can say, yeah, we'll let you, develop there, but it depends on how you're going to make that development. If you're going to make it like a cookie cutter box building, no, I agree. I don't think that would be. I would probably unsightly in that area. I think one of my concerns is, don't get me wrong, I think these type of properties, bringing in the different, facilities like the salons and the stuff like that, I think can serve a purpose in our town. I mean, sometimes should I go to the laundromat once in a while, I got to go. The laundromat's directly across the river, but I got to drive 30 minutes just to go over there, you know. And I think there are other people in town that those type of services could really be helpful rather than going all the way to Hudson or driving all the way to Londonderry down, down by the highway and whatnot. So I think coming into an area like that would be beneficial if it was developed right. I think my biggest concern is you're going to bring a lot of traffic to that area that already has a lot of traffic. And I mean, I'm just counting 1, 2, 3 more cutouts going right on to the main 3A right there, which is you're going to have a total of 4 in the span of probably about a mile. And that would be one concern that I would bring up, because you're going to bring that much more traffic in there. I think it's a good idea and the concept is right, because I do think that these services are beneficial to our town. But I think you would have to really consider how you develop that area and how that area is going to look, whether you have more tree buffers between 3A and the property, so it doesn't take away the value of the people on the other side of the street. I think there is value in the concept. It's just obviously has to be really structured on how it's developed, in my mind.
But I think you gotta look at the houses across the street, no different than there's houses all along there that'll be torn down. But the houses across the street are still they're in a commercial district, so that was done that way.
Right.
So someday, I mean, there's a
Accountant.
there's an accountant.
There is,
there.
yeah.
You know, so they're gonna change over time. I mean, it's not that's just what's gonna happen. So back in 89 when we did this, way back. So
Next step.
the planning board at the time, I was involved with that. Jay was there too. We took a look at we gotta have to have some commercial. And so if we want commercial, let's put it at the north end of town, south end of town, leave the middle of town alone. And that's basically what we did.
Yeah.
And, you know, no different back then. Strip clubs were a big thing. Everybody was pushing you. You couldn't rule them out. So we put them in the middle of the quarry. So it's never going to happen. You know, so we did things like that back then just because we didn't want it. You know, I agree with them. So it's really a long-term thing, but as time goes on, you know, those houses, as things get developed on one side of the road, the people on the other side of the road are going to start selling, or people's going to buy a couple of the houses. I mean, you know, I just continue to buy the houses up through there. So the only, you know, I own part of Warren's now, and, you know, where the driving range is, there used to be 1,000 cars out there. That was a junkyard, you know? And when we opened up Albuquerque, I thought didn't look very good so I convinced Warren to sell me the junkyard, and we cleaned the junkyard up. And the same thing now, you know, so some of these things are still going to be there. I mean, there's still going to, if we don't do something like at Warren's, there's still going to be a shop, and still going to be an auto body shop there, and things like that is still going to exist. But
Yeah.
do we try to build something that we can get more revenue in for the town, so we can get some businesses in, so a restaurant can make it, and, you know, and other things. So that's really, I think when we started a couple of weeks ago, is how do we build some of this up so these places can survive? You know, we need some other businesses to come in.
Yeah, no, I agree. It would be beneficial to the town to have a variety of businesses that they could go to and service the town. My biggest feeling is that, you know, when it does look to be developed, if it gets to that point, is how it gets developed
Yeah.
on the face of it. You know,
And I agree with that. I agree. No different than, you know, I've said before, where we were proposing houses, I had an approval to build mini warehouses. I personally don't like the looks of mini warehouses.
Yeah.
Although Dana did a very nice job at you know, looks nice down at the south end of town, because of the color and what, you know, it came out very nice. I don't like them, so I'm not going to build them. You know, I just don't like the looks of them. I think people driving in, but again, I don't think quarries are very good looking, but that's what I have. So
Just a couple of facts from last meeting. Again, the NC zone is 311 acres, 59 total properties, 28 existing homes.
Which
What is this?
the northern commercial zone.
Okay.
The total land area is 311 acres.
Yeah.
There's 59 properties
Okay.
total, 28 residential homes. Okay, about half.
Mhm.
12 commercial lots, 2 industrial lots, 2 churches, 2 conservation lots, 13 undeveloped lots. You know, Rick owns 11 of the 13, and I think the Colbys across the street that make up the other 2.
So when you get down, you know, when you get down around Colby Road, that's probably always going to stay as it is. Um, they- There might be a couple, there might be one house left in there between Colby Road and 3A, but you get the convenience store, then the sheet rocking company, which took down, and, you know, that stuff's going to stay like that.
From what I understand, a big reason why it's not developed is that it's commercial and the zoning board has been so, by the ordinances by not granting special exceptions
Mhm.
left and right. And that's a big reason why it's not developed yet. And also, and that's what I'm afraid of is as much as I really do want to encourage more multifamily housing, because we do need those different price points and sizes in town. I don't think I don't think we can, because it's in the commercial zone, I don't think we should be allowing it to be purely residential. I think it mixed use at most, because to try to at least get some of that revenue back versus bleeding the residential zone into the areas where, that are kind of our last hopes of getting any kind of businesses in town.
Well, how would you, I think that's what we've tried to do here is have mixed use with residential and commercial and not.
Yeah, what's interesting about the plan is lots B, C, D, E, I, J, K are all currently not allowed by the NC zone.
But the ratio, right? Like if we had left it, if we work with just a mixed use, the ratio to the amount of homes here to the businesses being built is not the 1-to-1 or even 2-to-1. And I think we need to stick with that original idea, when these were developed, the ordinances were developed to hold to that commercial zone. But that's just my thoughts.
Are you talking about square footage? What do you mean? I guess I.
Well, you said it is, it's mixed use if you look at this as one entire plan. But
Yeah.
there's no, right now, there's obviously incentive to build houses. But say some of these multifamily houses go up, but there's still no real incentive to build the commercial alongside of it unless it's a part of unless the ordinances say, mixed use, as in like it's all built at one time. And I think you had said last meeting, you're not going to build a ton of retail shops because storefronts just are not doing as well right now.
And that's still the case, and that's going to be the case for who knows? Who knows when brick and mortar is going to come back?
Well, there are communities that do have zoning districts or overlays where they allow multifamily residential as part of a mixed-use development, and then require a fiscal impact study that shows that revenue positive, it has to be revenue positive or at least revenue neutral, and the commercial component is a required component of the plan. So that is an option to kind of get
Okay.
to where you're going.
Versus just of what it has now, where it's kind of talking about, like you said, like a plumber that lives alongside it. So that would be a more like a.
For a larger scale development,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
I think we've always felt the commercial, when I say commercial, I mean retail and some of the other uses up in the north end that we've mapped here. They're going to be developed based on market condition, no doubt.
Right. So what I'm saying is if we were to update the ordinances to allow by conditional use multifamily housing, then there's no reason why this all can't be multifamily housing if they're developed piece by piece.
Understood.
There would have to be some kind of tie-in some kind of ratio or something where it says at the same time the commercial or industrial uses built at the same time.
Right, where G, H, I, and J are part of the same development rather than different developments, as an example.
Yeah, and I think we were just showing them, even almost in any project, there's gonna be there could be a different developer, so we're just kind of showing
Oh, yeah,
that
yeah,
what
of course.
different things that could be there. And no different than I said, J could be, that doesn't have to be elderly housing, that could be something else. It, it is always gonna be a challenge to get, look, we've been waiting since '89
Right.
and we don't have much. And
But I
I
think the
don't, you know,
general idea in town is that I don't think people are that upset that it's not developed.
Yeah, it's not developed.
Right. You know, people,
Yeah.
I feel like every time a new development comes in, there's a lot of people that are not happy about it, whether it, you know, looks nice or not. Most of the time they look, you know, they look nice, but we need to find some way to ensure that it's revenue positive, like you said, Jay. And that's where, like you had said, the adding that residential piece as a conditional use, that's a very big change to the commercial district.
you know, but then when you get down across from Mel's, it's residential all around that. What do you put there that works? You know, and anything, if we do have a chance of making commercial brick and mortar work, it's in that intersection of Albuquerque and 3A. I don't think anything south of that, there's not enough traffic. You need the traffic. Everything's driven by traffic counts and people coming and going. And you need the traffic from Albuquerque to make anything work there, to where people are going to stop. If you put a gas station across from Mel's, and I'm just throwing that up, if you put a gas station across from Mel's, they're going to drive right by it. They're not. It's there, but it's out of the way. No different if you drive down Brown Avenue. Both gas stations on Brown Avenue have closed.
Yeah.
You know, down in Manchester,
Mhm.
they both closed. So it's because they're not in the heavy flow, and they're hard to get in and out of in some cases. So it's a challenge to make that all work. We're on Sandstone, or whatever the name of it, Sandstone, I think, when you go up to the lights, you get on, isn't that Sandstone Drive, whatever?
Oh,
With
Roundstone?
the Irving gas
Yeah,
station.
Brownstone.
I think it's
That place
Roundstone.
is busy
Busy
all
as
the time
Yeah.
Yeah.
because everybody's getting on the highway and
Yeah.
going.
Yeah.
I agree with you. It's got to be like a destination. Like Mel's is a destination. You can't get that in Londonderry and Hudson or anything. The golf courses are destinations. Like people drive there to get to it. So there's still other, like, you obviously have to have somebody come in, you know, with the business, but unfortunately for Litchfield, that's really the only kind of business that I think is going to attract anybody. It's got to be like, I need to go to this particular restaurant or this particular store for this reason. I agree with you there.
I understand your point about the integrated multifamily project with the retail. We have been involved in a number of them where the municipalities say, look, don't come in here with, in this particular one, 260 units and then a retail piece. We're not going to let you build all 260 because we want the retail piece to make it truly a mixed use. I think that's what you're saying.
Well, not necessarily retail, just commercial. Yeah.
Commercial.
Fitness studios, like you said.
And I get that. I understand that. But at these low densities, it would be tough to, it'd be tough to say, well, you know, you can only build 24 of the 36 until you build something out front on the commercial. That would be
I
difficult.
agree with you. I just
Yeah.
I don't think that my general feeling from talking to people in town is that they're not necessarily concerned that it's not developed.
I agree.
I think the other thing too, I mean, is traffic. I mean, to think, I mean, certainly I think but it is to take into consideration that, you know, to build all that, and then it's just, I think the traffic issue is just going to get more of a challenge to try to control. I don't know. That's just my thought.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, that's where item number 1 on the CUP, or item 2, I think impacts, if there's a proposal that comes forward that's a high intense user that traffic is, cannot be addressed, you have that authority.
What does everybody think of the conditional uses that are recommended here tonight for these analysis that take into consideration? Just curious.
I'd still want a hard copy to really think
Sink it,
about that. Just
absorb
seeing,
it.
just seeing it,
Right.
yeah, and it's big. But I do like the idea of the services being offered. We do lack some of that in town. What's the Albuquerque, the end of Albuquerque where these townhomes may go, or whatever this is? Is that commercial? The end of Albuquerque on
Yes.
3A? So you're not locked into having apartments or townhomes or something there. You would have a different commercial business there. Where you set on,
At Albuquerque?
at the end of Albuquerque and 3A, you have these.
Lot G.
Oh, I
Yeah,
think,
those long homes, what are these? Are these,
Right
yeah,
here
G
at
and H
J.
or something?
I think that was industrial, right? Or that?
But no, I think those
commercial?
were, is that what you wanted, the residential?
G and H.
Yeah,
Yeah,
That was
well,
commercial, right?
yes.
so it was a
storefronts.
commercial. Okay, good. All right. So the J and I were more the residential for
Yeah.
senior and okay.
and,
I mean, and
Okay, I thought it looked like Condo Alley there for a minute.
I was gonna say, I could certainly take a stab at taking some of these and integrating them into the existing language of the ordinance so we could see how it flows, if that's helpful. We've got our kind of freestanding, I mean, there is one difference between what we have freestanding, because right now, the draft language we have on warehousing and distribution was intended to be its own warrant article that would affect all the zones, all the commercial and industrial zones. So that would be a difference from this in the way that warehousing and distribution is shown here as permitted use. So that's one difference, but I could work with that still. And then I could take a stab at kind of separately drafting some language as to what a mixed use language might look like as a conditional use with that, net revenue, net positive, kind of separately, if
Okay.
there's an interest in that.
Sure. Kim, I'm sorry. I know we kind of drifted away. I know you wanted to.
Oh, this is just so people could see, you were bringing up the gas station sales, and if you just look, you can see you're allowed with conditional, in what sections, like number 14, you're in section 4 here, a northern commercial. See if you go down to line 14, we were talking about gasoline sales, and we wanted to talk about convenience stores as well, but see how this conditional use permit
Right.
for 2 of the 3, it was just a quick snapshot of what's there now and what is not. That's our current state of what we can do and what's permitted and not permitted. And just so you know, number 6, it's just an email I sent out of the existing businesses in the northern part of town when I drove back and forth, all the signs. There might be a few that you can't see, but again, what's there? You can probably determine why it happened. But we just need to know where we are today before we can jump to that. So
Yeah, that's a
yours will
good-
tie, your wording will tie.
That's a good table, sure.
So.
We like Jay's idea of have him take a lash at it, and we could appear back here the next workshop.
Yeah, why not? Sure. We could do that.
And tomorrow I can forward also this master plan to everybody, so you can have it electronically and also the proposed language.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what about the warehouses now? I mean, I know we've been talking about that specifically. Do we want to make that separate, or how do we want to?
Yes.
You wanted all 3 commercial zones together, or are we going to do each one?
Well, that ordinance only looked at
At
that
the
one issue
specific-
in all the commercial industrial zones, so that's kind of separate.
Oh, yeah, I agree, but do we want a warrant article for distribution centers in the north, or distribution centers in the southern commercial, people, again, I'm trying to think of what the voters
to-
might be thinking.
I guess
Well,
that's up
maybe
to that's up to the board. But
Yeah.
I think it's probably easier as one, but we could. I mean, we can still discuss that. We could take
yeah,
a look
that
at it
it
as well.
might pass or not, just based, it's a strategy. So,
But like where Barron's was gonna go,
Right.
I mean, that's a perfect place for a building. You're not gonna see it. You're never gonna see it from free. No different than the whatever that LQ.
Okay.
Okay, Q.
I mean, you don't see it. You don't even know it's out there.
Hmm.
And you get revenue from it. And where Barron's is, you could do that same thing. So you really should, because what's up in front of that someday will be something. There's too much land right there to have what you permit to be there. You can only, no one, I mean, maybe someday someone will build a bank, but highly unlikely. There's just things that, most of the things that are in, that are permitted, they're not, a doctor's office, highly unlikely, things like that, but.
Although I think wasn't there a chiropractor office on this road at one time? Chiropractor?
Yeah, kind of.
Was it
Three down from the
chiropractor? I can't
accountant,
remember.
right?
There could have been.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
over here. It was like 2 or 3 down from the accountant.
Yeah, yeah.
There was a chiropractor?
I think so. Someone had a chiropractor sign. I saw that. Yeah.
I don't think anymore.
No, I don't think they're doing it anymore. But
So that's the biggest, I mean, what's gonna happen out there? I mean, could be nothing, could stay residential forever, I guess, that people can stay that way. I guess it doesn't matter.
I think we had talked about removing warehouses from the southern commercial districts, commercial industrial, and then
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think the way that
concentrating-
ordinance was, the way that proposal was constructed is it was intended to limit warehousing and distribution in all the zones where it's currently permitted. The only zone where it actually liberalized it was the northern commercial to allow something like Barron's. Otherwise it was, so one option is
Yeah.
leave the kind of restricted approach as one warrant article and then pull the conditional use that allowed it in this zone and bring it into this language. You could certainly do that. I'll do it both ways.
yeah,
Yeah, if we may, from where we sit, we'd like them separated,
Yeah.
Yep, I think they should be separated.
definitely.
Are you changing the northern industrial? What are you changing? Well, how are you changing that?
Limiting the size of a
I think it's
warehousing
the
and distribution
size.
facility.
What size are you gonna be at?
I think it was what,
It
under
was
100?
75,000 square feet and
75.
under was what Jay had originally proposed,
Yeah.
but you would just.
As
put
permitted, but then there's also a conditional use provision that
That's
allows
right.
larger.
150 by conditional use. We need to do that.
In the industrial zone?
So warehousing generally yields for distribution about maximum 14,000 square feet per usable acre. Just to give you a sense as you're thinking through that. So if you had a 10-acre piece, a 140,000 square foot warehouse distribution with not docking on one side and a very small parking area could fit in a stormwater practice in reasonable open space. That's kind of what we see for the distribution uses. I'll give you a sense as when you start thinking about 75,000, it's 7 acres.
How big is LK2? Wasn't it like 30?
Or 40, something
40.
like that. Yeah, about 40.
It's gonna be,
It was 65.
I thought it was pretty big.
I was like
Maybe it's bigger.
50, if I might be wrong, but I think it's like a 50,000 square foot building,
I don't remember it's 65.
Yeah.
I bet I could find it.
at least that, I would think.
Well, the southern commercial industrial allows warehouses as well, right? It's number, if you go to section number 5,
I wrote it down.
page number, I think I took a 34 and 36. I'm just trying to focus on warehouses, number 36. So it is permitted
Was it
in the
30?
southern commercial industrial. So again, I don't know if we want to split these up or do them separate.
That's a decision we can make.
Right.
I mean, it's a lot to have, 5 or 6 warrant articles in front of the voters, all dealing with warehousing and distribution. So
I agree.
that's just one thing to think
That's what I mean.
about.
That's the strategy we have to think of too.
I do
But
wanna-
right now, it is a permitted use and there
Right.
isn't a size limitation.
Right.
So the intent of the proposed language we looked at before was to put a limitation on size
Mhm.
in it and all other districts that allow it currently.
Are they allowed in the highway commercial district?
No.
For the rent, you can't put.
And our thought was to try to keep them towards the northern end, prevent trucks from going up and down. Cars going cross towards the airport.
Right. Yeah, because that would be with the access. That was obviously the access issue.
Right, yeah, this point,
To
I
the
don't think
highway.
they're going through Hudson to get to the highway. So Jay, I have a list,
Go to section 5 there,
if we're
number
specifying.
36.
I had added a few things to retail and
The
I had
36 is warehouses,
kind of brainstormed a bunch of stuff.
also
I don't know if it
34,
needs
but
to
let's
be
just focus on
written down
36.
or not.
It's permitted in the
Organize it and send it to
southern
you. instead of-
commercial industrial.
Okay.
How they said, they were saying like adding like bakery. If we're adding bakery, then do we need to be adding a couple of other specific things or not? So I might be sending you something too. to
Okay.
possibly add to that.
30, number 36.
That's always a
34
debate,
maybe.
But yeah,
Right.
That's what I mean,
don't want
it's
it to
hard
be
to
a
read
paragraph
those and
that's
you know, you
long.
had to kind of.
What's allowed.
right. You're limited to things that kind of bring other things in the category.
Okay,
And,
I'll try to sort it.
right.
Make it as.
Bakery's a
um,
good one to call
specific as
out
possible.
because sometimes the zoning administrator will interpret a bakery interestingly as a manufacturing use because you're actually making a product. I know it's odd, but I've seen that happen.
Okay,
So calling that one's out, but you don't need to call it every single retail store, obviously,
Right.
because that's,
yeah, that would be,
so yeah, definitely send me what you got.
okay. I'll clean it up for you.
Recreational uses being in the commercial district.
So I guess maybe Jay, you can put together some
Yeah.
language and some alternatives.
Yes.
And we can take a look at those next time. Does anybody have anything else that they want to add?
Private or
We'll see where this goes and
Okay.
go from
Get
there, I
a
guess.
digest a little bit and.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Cool.
We've got, I mean, if we keep with the schedule of one per month, we've
Mhm.
got, 2 to 3 more work sessions before we've got to make some decisions.
We're gonna hard copy of what they talked about tonight.
Yeah, I'll send that to everybody.
Yeah, Jay will send that out.
And the 5 points from the attorney were on that, right? You were
Yes.
reading that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's,
Yes. I'm sorry I didn't bring copies.
No, that's okay.
I thought Jay had a working computer.
They were up on the screen.
They
Another
were.
one. Good job, good job. Jay. How's our plan? Was that up there? No?
What, your plan was up there?
Oh, was it? I didn't
It
see
was.
it.
You were just looking down off your paper
Yeah.
there.
Well, if nothing else, you're hearing from a property owner
Yeah.
and, an applicant who owns property in the NC zone. And you're getting real life feedback.
Yeah, we are.
Very helpful.
Very.
I think you know Rick enough to know it's he's in it for the town as well.
Yep.
And
Sure.
we thank you for your time. We'll probably see you at the next session.
All right,
Okay.
awesome.
Great.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
guys. Thanks for coming in.
Can I have this or
Yeah.
you want it back?
no, you're gonna have,
Okay.
this is we'll keep adding to it.
Thank you, Jake.
Thank you.
You.
Here,
Okay, take care.
Oh, okay.
color coded and tabbed really helps.
Guys can feel free to stay for the workshop if you like.
For dinosaurs,
They're out.
dinosaurs, it really helps.
All right, committee reports. Any reports from any committees? Kim, do you want to start us
Um,
off?
I'll start you off. Let's see. The Board of Selectmen will meet on Monday, September 27th at 6:30 PM here at the Town Hall. And we are starting budget season. So it's interesting to see how our town runs financially. So tomorrow will be NRPC's commissioner meeting. We are meeting at a different place. We are meeting at the auditorium in Nashua City Hall. Masks are required, and the meeting will be on the 3rd floor. That starts at 7 PM. And that's all I have.
Okay. So that's tomorrow at City Hall.
Tomorrow at Nashua City Hall, 7 PM. 3rd floor, wear a mask.
Do you go in the front entrance of the building or how do you? get
No,
in
we
there?
have to go to the back.
You have to go to the back. Okay. Lower Merrimack Local River Advisory Committee doesn't have any projects on the radar, so there was no meeting for this month. Conservation meeting will be in our first week in October. What's that?
So we're gonna be at the fire station.
Oh, we're going to be at the fire station. Okay, thanks, Matt. The Capital Improvement Committee, I think, is going to be meeting October 4th, my understanding. There was an email that was sent out, but we'll find out if that's the case. And our next meeting is going to be, is it October 2nd
For planning board,
for planning board?
5th.
5th, I'm sorry. Yes, 5th. Okay, all right. So that's all I have for reports. Approval of the September 7th, 2021 minutes. Did everyone have an opportunity to take a look at those? I think that was were attached with the agenda. And I did look at them earlier. They seemed to look good. So we want to entertain a motion to accept them. We can do that.
So moved.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor of approval of the minutes for September 7th, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, abstained, motion passes 6-0-0. Okay. Any other business this evening? Jay, do you have anything that you would like to add?
I do not.
Okay. All right. Anybody have anything that they'd like to add? No? Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, well, you can certainly ask
Because
questions.
you brought up the SIP meeting.
Yeah.
So when we do these new warrant articles, they all kind of have to tie in with master plan or master plan changes that are going to happen and probably the SIP long-term, the goals, right? As well. Aren't they all
Should.
supposed to?
Right, I mean,
So,
Ideally, yes.
right. So I'm just saying we have to keep that aware if we, with our timeline. Yeah. That's all.
Okay. If there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor of adjournment, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed, abstained, motion passes 6-0-0. Thank you for joining us this evening. Tomorrow is the first day of fall, so
Oh.
we exit summer and into fall. So have a good evening. Thank you.